He's old already. Don't waste money trying to save him. That was the cruel thing my father said to the family when my grandfather was hospitalized and needed a large sum of money for treatment to survive. After that remark, what did Uncle Ryan, Aunt Kayla, and my cousins do? Did they try to save him? Let me tell you what happened next. Hello, everyone. My name is Ophelia. I'm 30 years old and currently the CEO and founder of Medicore Solutions. My company develops software for the healthcare industry, specializing in electronic medical record systems and medical data analytics. But the truth is, the success I have today isn't just mine. It belonged to my grandfather, Larry, who gave it to me after I cared for him in the hospital 3 years ago. I was 27 at the time and working as a tech engineer for a major tech company in San Jose. Life was stable. I had a 6-figure job, a cozy downtown apartment, and a bright future ahead of me. I still remember the day, early in the week, sometime in March. I was deep into a complex section of code for a new security system when my phone lit up. It was my dad, Dennis. That caught me off guard. He rarely called during work hours, usually only on weekends or if something important came up about my older sister. I hesitated, then picked up. Before I could say anything, my dad's tense voice cut through. "Ophelia, you need to get to the hospital right now. Grandpa is very sick. He might not make it." That froze the blood in my veins. I dropped everything and began packing up my desk with trembling hands. I rushed to my supervisor's desk, breathless. "I need emergency leave. My grandfather's in critical condition." He looked concerned and said, "Go. Family comes first. I hope everything turns out okay." I nodded, thanked him, and ran to the parking garage. The hour-and-a-half drive from San Jose to Modesto was filled with pounding heartbeats and worst-case scenarios. But deep down, I held on to hope. I prayed Grandpa would pull through. When I arrived at the hospital, I rushed straight to the ICU. The sight of him made my chest tighten. My strong, towering grandfather now looked small and fragile, entangled in a maze of wires and machines. Dr. Patterson, a silver-haired man with a serious but calm demeanor, gave me the news. "Mr. Larry has late-stage leukemia," he said. My throat went dry. I wished I had misheard him, that it was a bad dream. But then he continued, "There's a new immunotherapy. Given his age and health, it could extend his life by at least 2 years, possibly more if he responds well." For the first time since I got the call, I felt hope. But then came the blow. Because of his age and condition, insurance won't cover this experimental therapy. The hospital requires a $280,000 payment up front to begin treatment. That number hit me like a brick. Dr. Patterson sighed. "If the family can't afford it, we can only offer palliative care, fluids, oxygen, and pain medication to keep him comfortable until the end." He walked away, and I stood frozen in the hallway, the antiseptic smell thick in the air. 20 minutes later, my entire family gathered at the hospital, my parents, my older sister Olivia, Uncle Ryan and his wife and kids, Aunt Kayla and her children. But they didn't come to save Grandpa. They formed a cold circle in the hallway and discussed the situation like it was a business decision. Their minds were made up. They wouldn't pay for his treatment. When I brought up the new therapy, my father shook his head. "He's old already. Don't waste money trying to save him." That heartless statement made me snap. "How can you say that?" I cried. "He's the man who gave you life. You can't just let him die like this." The rest of them chuckled bitterly. Uncle Ryan patted my shoulder. "It's $280,000, Ophelia. That's no small amount. Do you know how much we could do with that money?" He wasn't wrong. It was a huge sum. But I thought, what if we all pitched in? "Let's all contribute a little," I said, trying to stay calm. "Together we can afford to save him." But no, that's when I saw their true selves. Aunt Kayla snapped. "Save him, and then what? He's going to die anyway. Don't throw money away on a dying man." Everyone else nodded in agreement. I looked around, heart pounding. "You can't do this to Grandpa." But it didn't matter. My mother turned to me coldly. "If you want to save your grandfather, use your own money. But don't come looking for help from us if you run out." Even Olivia chimed in. "They're right, Ophelia. Don't throw your money into a black hole." They each left with an excuse. Uncle Ryan had work. Aunt Kayla had an appointment. Olivia had to take her kid to tutoring, and my parents had things to do at home. No one stayed. It was as if Grandpa were just a failed investment. Finally alone, I was allowed to visit Grandpa. A nurse led me to the ICU. I held his frail hand and memories came flooding back. He used to sit for hours while I drew pictures of our family. When I had a fever at 12, he stayed up all night changing cold towels. When I got into college, he gifted me a 2010 Honda Civic, and when I was stressed at work, we'd sit together on the porch, and he'd listen without judgment. He never played favorites. He gave $2 million to each family when he sold the farmland. Dad opened an auto shop. Ryan invested in real estate. Kayla opened a salon. He also paid $180,000 for Marcus's brain surgery and $120,000 for Emma's NICU stay. But after the money was given, the visits stopped. The calls disappeared. Now here he was, hooked up to machines, abandoned. And I couldn't leave him. I decided then and there, if no one else would step up, I would. The next morning, I drove back to my company's office in San Jose with a heavy heart. But instead of heading to my desk, I went straight to the director's office, Mr. Johnson. He looked up, surprised to see me. I was someone who rarely took time off, always punctual, always focused. I sat across from him and explained everything, Grandpa's condition, the treatment, the cost, and how my family had turned their backs on him. Mr. Johnson listened silently, his face unreadable. When I finished, he sighed and said, "Ophelia, you've been one of our most reliable engineers. I understand what you're facing, but the policy only allows 1 month of emergency leave. Any more than that, and it affects our current project timelines." I nodded, trying not to show the tears welling up behind my eyes. I understood. 1 month wouldn't be enough, but at least it was a start. That afternoon, I walked into the bank and withdrew all of my savings, nearly $150,000. It had taken me years to build that fund. Watching the account drop to just a few $100s stung, but I didn't regret it. Still, it wasn't enough. I stepped out into the sunlight and called Caleb, my closest friend from college. He now worked in real estate and had always been someone I could trust with anything. He picked up on the second ring. "Ophelia? Hey, I need a huge favor." I explained what had happened, how my family had reacted, and that I needed to sell my apartment quickly. Caleb was silent for a moment. Then he said softly, "Your family's awful, Ophelia, but you've always done the right thing. I'll help." He not only agreed to sell the apartment, but loaned me $150,000 on the spot. "No interest. Pay me back after the apartment sells," he said. That kind of friendship hit me right in the chest. With $300,000 in hand, I drove back to the hospital in Modesto and headed straight to the finance department. I paid the $280,000 up front to begin Grandpa's treatment. The hospital moved quickly. They transferred him to the intensive care unit, brought in advanced equipment, and began the immunotherapy protocol. That night, I sat beside his bed under the low light of the ICU, and for the first time since this ordeal began, I felt like I could breathe again. During the first 2 days, I didn't leave the hospital. The chair beside Grandpa's bed became my resting place. I told him stories about the farm, about the porch talks, about the days he used to carry me on his back through the almond groves. I gently wiped his face with warm towels. I whispered, "Grandpa, I'm right here. You're not alone." But the silence from the rest of my family was deafening. After I paid for the treatment, I called my father, still clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, he would change his mind. He didn't. His voice was cold. "You're just throwing money into a hole, Ophelia. Call me when he's dead." Then he hung up. That long, empty beep pierced my chest like a blade. Uncle Ryan and Aunt Kayla didn't even answer my calls. None of them set foot in the hospital. During those dark hours, a young nursing intern named Everly helped more than she probably knew. She was in her final year at UC San Francisco, brown hair in a neat bun, gentle blue eyes, and a quiet strength. At first, she just did her job, but when she noticed I was always alone, she began to stay a little longer, showing me how to massage Grandpa's limbs, how to monitor vitals, and what progress to look for. She'd bring me coffee, sit and talk so I wouldn't feel so alone. Once, during a quiet moment, she asked gently, "Do you have any other family here?" I shook my head. "They don't care." Everly didn't say much, just listened, occasionally nodded. But in her presence, I felt something I hadn't felt in days, comfort. One night, I finally worked up the courage. "Would it be okay if I got your number? I want to thank you properly for all this." She smiled and nodded, gave me her number. And in that moment, I promised myself, if Grandpa recovered, I'd invite her to dinner. Not just to say thank you, but because she made me feel seen. On the third day of treatment, something miraculous happened. While I was reading aloud from the newspaper, Grandpa's hand twitched. Then, slowly, his eyes opened. He was still weak, but those familiar eyes recognized me. Tears blurred my vision. I ran to get Dr. Patterson. He examined Grandpa carefully, reading the monitors. Finally, he turned to me and said, "Mr. Larry is responding well. His blood counts are improving. There are strong signs of recovery." I almost collapsed from the relief. A week into treatment, Grandpa was sitting up, talking in a soft but steady voice. One afternoon, while I peeled an apple for him, he looked at me with a curious expression. "I haven't seen Dennis, Ryan, or Kayla since I got here. Are they tied up with something important?" I paused, the peeler in my hand. I had been avoiding this, but I knew I couldn't lie to him. I met his eyes. "I have to be honest, Grandpa. They decided not to pay for your treatment. They left." He didn't react at first, just stared out the window. Then a long sigh escaped his chest. "I never thought that at 80 years old I'd still be wrong about people. And worst of all, the people I was wrong about are my children." His words shattered me. I held his hand tightly. "You still have me. I'm always here for you." He gave me a faint, grateful smile, then gently ran his hand over my hair like he used to when I was a child. We sat in silence for a while, just breathing in the moment. Then Grandpa turned to me with surprising strength in his voice. "Ophelia, I need you to contact the Elder Protection Agency for me. I want them to come here." His request surprised me, but one look into Grandpa's serious eyes told me this wasn't a moment of confusion or emotion. It was purpose. 2 hours later, officers from the Adult Protective Services, APS, arrived at the hospital. Grandpa, despite his frailty, spoke clearly and with conviction. He explained how his children, my father Dennis, Uncle Ryan, and Aunt Kayla, had abandoned him in the hospital during his most critical hour. When asked for more details, I provided everything: how they had refused to pay the $280,000, how they all left immediately after that family meeting, and how none of them had checked in since. The APS team took detailed notes and immediately began verifying the story. They called each one of them. My father said bluntly, "I'm not involved in paying hospital bills. That's not my problem." Uncle Ryan was colder. "We made it clear from the beginning. We're not spending that kind of money on an old man." Aunt Kayla snapped, "I have my own kids to take care of. I'm not wasting the $280,000 on someone who won't live much longer." What they didn't know was that every call APS made was recorded, as required by their protocols. Every cruel, heartless word captured in full. When the officers finished logging their findings and left, Grandpa looked at me with quiet intensity. I knew then that this wasn't over. Gathering evidence was just the first step. Grandpa immediately asked me to contact his longtime attorney, Mrs. Morgan, and have her come to the hospital that same day. She'd worked with him for over 20 years, helped sell the farm, draft property transfers, and manage legal affairs for the entire family. 30 minutes after I called her, Mrs. Morgan arrived. She was a composed woman in her early 50s, silver hair neatly tied, dressed in a tailored black suit, carrying a leather briefcase full of documents. Despite his fatigue, Grandpa greeted her with a determined smile. She took a seat beside his bed, opened her briefcase, and began pulling out paperwork. Then, to my astonishment, Grandpa said, "I want you to begin the legal process to reclaim the properties I transferred to Dennis, Ryan, and Kayla." I blinked, stunned. "Grandpa, can you even do that?" Mrs. Morgan turned to me and calmly explained. Years ago, when Grandpa transferred the houses to his children, he included a very specific clause in the property agreements. It stated that once he became elderly, ill, or hospitalized, they were obligated to provide care for him until the end of his life. If they failed to fulfill that responsibility, they would forfeit ownership of the property and be required to return it to him upon request. That clause was legally binding, and their complete abandonment of him at the hospital was a direct violation. Now I understood why Grandpa had insisted on involving APS. He knew what he was doing. He had protected himself, legally. With the recordings and documentation from APS, plus my sworn testimony, Grandpa had a rock-solid case. That same day, he also authorized Mrs. Morgan to manage several financial accounts and investments. She took careful notes and promised to act quickly. Before she left, Mrs. Morgan looked at Grandpa and said, "In all our years working together, I've never seen you this resolved. I promise we'll handle this swiftly." After she left, Grandpa reclined in his hospital bed, calm but unwavering. That night, as I sat beside him, I could feel the air shift. It was like the moment before a storm, quiet, heavy, inevitable. The next morning, while slicing apples for his breakfast, my phone buzzed with a notification from the bank. I assumed it was just another alert for hospital payments. I opened it casually, then froze. $3 million. I stared at the screen, speechless. The sender's name, Larry Green, my grandfather. A shocked gasp escaped me. I turned to look at him, eyes wide. He smiled gently and said, "This is your reward, Ophelia." My voice trembled. "Grandpa, I can't accept this. It's too much." But he cut me off with a firm shake of his head. "Take it. Call Caleb. Tell him not to sell your apartment, and get him something nice. He helped your old man." I nodded slowly, overwhelmed with emotion. This wasn't just about money. It was love, trust, everything Grandpa had built in a lifetime, passed to me with no conditions. Tears welled up, but I smiled through them. "Thank you, Grandpa. I'll never forget this. Ever." He grinned and added, "You've loved tech since you were a kid. Use that money to start your own company. It's time to fly." That spark, something I had buried for years, suddenly lit up. With $3 million, I could finally bring to life the ideas I'd spent years sketching in notebooks. He hadn't just given me money. He'd given me a future. Right after that, I called Caleb. "Good news," I told him. "I can pay you back, and we're not selling the apartment anymore." He was stunned. "Wait, what? Ophelia, how? Where'd you get the money?" I told him the truth. Caleb was quiet, then simply said, "Your grandpa's incredible. I'm happy for you, really." Within an hour, I wired the $150,000 back into his account. But I didn't stop there. Grandpa had asked me to get Caleb something nice. I remembered Caleb's obsession with the Rolex Submariner. He'd talked about it for years. That afternoon, I went to Toe, a high-end store in Union Square, San Francisco. I bought the black Submariner date, ceramic bezel, sleek finish, $12,500. I invited Caleb to a steakhouse that evening. When he arrived, I handed him the gift box. He opened it, froze, then looked up at me with disbelief. "Ophelia, this is insane. I can't accept this." I smiled. "You believed in me when no one else did. This is from both me and Grandpa." He slipped the watch on, eyes shimmering. "I'll never forget this, Ophelia, and I'm proud I helped you." That night, watching him light up, I felt the truth of something Grandpa once told me. True gratitude is shown, not said. 2 days later, something unexpected happened that pushed my relationship with Everly to a new turning point. That morning, around 10 a.m., I stepped out to buy hot soup for Grandpa's lunch. While I was gone, my parents, Uncle Ryan, and Aunt Kayla's families suddenly showed up at the hospital. They had just received the official notice from Attorney Morgan informing them that Grandpa was suing to reclaim the houses. I wasn't there to stop them, and the daytime nurses didn't know about the family's history or tension. Around 10 people marched into Grandpa's hospital room. When the nurse politely asked them to visit one at a time, as per hospital policy, they completely ignored her. Once inside, no one asked how Grandpa was doing, not a single word of concern. Instead, my father Dennis immediately began accusing Grandpa of being cruel for wanting to take back their homes. Uncle Ryan and Aunt Kayla chimed in, voices raised, calling him ungrateful and unfair. They insisted they had cared for him for years, that he was abandoning them. It was a lie, every word of it. The shouting began to take a toll. Grandpa's monitor started beeping. His heart rate was climbing. His blood pressure spiked. He looked overwhelmed and frightened, drained by their presence. Everly had been walking past the room and immediately sensed something was wrong. She rushed in, assesses the situation, and saw how dangerously agitated Grandpa had become. With a firm but professional voice, she said, "You all need to leave, now. This behavior is putting the patient at risk." My father turned on her. "You're just a nurse. This is a family matter. Stay out of it." But Everly stood her ground. She calmly pulled out her phone, called hospital security, and texted me to come back immediately. Within 2 minutes, 5 security officers arrived. Thanks to Everly's clear explanation and presence of mind, they escorted the entire group out of the hospital and warned them not to return. 10 minutes later, I arrived, soup still warm in my hands. When I walked into Grandpa's room, Everly was by his side, checking his vitals and speaking softly to soothe him. His face was pale, exhausted, and deeply hurt. Seeing him like that, after what he'd just endured, filled me with rage and sorrow. When Grandpa finally drifted off to sleep, Everly and I stepped into the hallway. I looked at her and said, "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been here." She nodded, then said something that changed everything. "You should request the surveillance footage from hospital security. That video can support the APS report and could be used to file a no-contact order." In that moment, I saw her differently. She wasn't just kind. She was smart, brave, always thinking ahead, always protecting him. When we returned to the room, Grandpa had woken up and looked noticeably better. He turned to me and smiled slyly. "Everly's a good one, Ophelia. Don't let that chance slip away." I laughed, a little embarrassed. But in my heart, I already knew. After submitting the footage to APS, it only took 2 more days for them to act. The entire family received court-approved no-contact orders from Stanislaus County. They were prohibited from coming within 500 feet of Grandpa. The order would remain in place until the end of his life. From that day on, none of them showed up again. The hospital became a place of peace. Grandpa could finally focus on healing, without fear, without stress. As for me, I had a decision to make. I met with Mr. Johnson, my boss, and formally resigned from my job. He was shocked, knowing I was one of the company's top engineers. But when I explained what had happened, and that I was starting my own company with Grandpa's support, he understood. He shook my hand and said, "The door is always open for you, Ophelia. I'm proud of what you're doing." After wrapping up my offboarding, I devoted all my time to Grandpa. That period, those quiet weeks in the hospital and later at home, became something precious. Our bond grew deeper with each passing day. And so did my bond with Everly. After her shifts, we'd sit and talk in the hospital cafeteria or walk quietly through the nearby park. She had this gentle way of listening that made me feel heard, seen, safe. The more I learned about her resilience, her warmth, her sense of purpose, the more I knew. This wasn't just gratitude. I was falling in love with her. 2 months later, Grandpa's condition had stabilized. The doctors approved his discharge. I decided to move in with him full-time to continue supporting his recovery. I also hired Mrs. Patricia, a professional caregiver with a background in elder care, to assist when needed. 1 month after his discharge, the property dispute trial began at the county courthouse. That day, armed with overwhelming evidence, APS reports, recorded calls, hospital surveillance footage, and the original contracts, we stood ready. Grandpa couldn't attend due to his health, so I stood in his place. Beside me, Caleb, Attorney Morgan, and Everly, who was now officially my girlfriend. I had confessed my feelings a few weeks earlier during a quiet, heartfelt moment in the hospital garden. She told me she had fallen for me too, when she saw how fiercely I loved Grandpa. When the judge delivered the ruling, it was swift and firm. The court ordered my parents, Uncle Ryan and Aunt Kayla, to return the houses to Grandpa within 30 days. They were also ordered to pay all legal fees. The courtroom fell silent. My family walked out, heads down, avoiding every eye. I didn't feel pity. What I felt was sadness, not for me, but for them. They could have stood by us. They could have done the right thing, but they chose otherwise. It's been 3 years since the day Grandpa began treatment at Modesto Hospital. His health has remained strong and stable, proving that choosing to fight for him was the right decision. In those 3 years, my life has changed in ways I never imagined. Everly and I were married, in a warm, intimate ceremony surrounded by close friends, and most importantly, Grandpa. He was the one who walked me down the aisle, his steps slow but his spirit radiant. I'll never forget the tears in his eyes as he whispered, "You've made me proud, Ophelia, more than you'll ever know." We now have a beautiful little girl named Olivia. She just turned 1 last month. Everly and I chose her name together during one of those long hospital nights when we would dream out loud about the future. True to Grandpa's wish, I used the $3 million gift to found my own company. Medicor Solutions. Combining my tech background with the needs I witnessed firsthand in the hospital, I built a software firm that focuses on healthcare systems, streamlining medical records, improving patient data security, and optimizing treatment plans with AI analytics. Today, Medicor Solutions has over 30 employees, multiple contracts with hospitals across California, and a growing reputation for innovation in healthcare technology. We still live with Grandpa by choice. Our home isn't just a house, it's the center of our lives. Everly, being a nurse, monitors Grandpa's health daily. She makes sure he takes his medication on time and sticks to a nutrition plan that keeps him energetic and engaged. Olivia absolutely adores him. Every morning she toddles into his room, arms outstretched, calling Papa as he scoops her onto his lap. It's become their special ritual, just the two of them. As for my parents, Uncle Ryan and Aunt Kayla, they vanished from our lives after that court ruling. Their community didn't take kindly to what they had done. Word spread quickly. Neighbors whispered, friends distanced themselves. Eventually, all three families sold their properties and moved away. What became of the three houses the court returned to Grandpa? He entrusted them to me. I now manage the properties, rent them out, and ensure that the income supports both Grandpa's care and charitable initiatives in his name. Each year, we donate a portion of the rental income to leukemia research and elderly care programs. Not once in these 3 years has anyone from the family reached out, not to ask about Grandpa's health, not to apologize, not even to check in. They chose silence. And honestly, I've made peace with that, because what I gained far outweighs what I lost. If there's one message I hope you take from this story, it's this. Love and loyalty can't be measured in dollars. What I did for Grandpa wasn't about inheritance or reward. It was about doing what was right. The money, the business, the houses, those were outcomes. But they were never the goal. The real treasure was in the moments we shared, the bond we deepened, the values he instilled in me. If I had to do it all over again, even if Grandpa had no wealth, no assets, nothing, I would still have sacrificed everything to save him. Because love, care, and gratitude, those things are priceless. They can't be bought, and they can never be replaced. Now I want to ask you, if you were in my position, what would you do? Would you fight for someone you love, even if it meant going against your entire family? Would you risk it all to save the person who once carried you through your darkest days? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. And if this story moved you, if it made you think or made you feel, please share it with someone else. Because sometimes a story is all it takes to remind someone of what truly matters. Thank you for sticking with me through this journey. I'll see you again in the next story, one filled with heart, hard choices, and the kind of lessons we carry for life.